Hello, 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 everybody. Here we are again, coming to you from Broadcast Team Alpha with the Paranormal World Show. And this is the show for the thinking people that is not afraid to question things. Because when you do, you learn things that you're not supposed to know about. And that's what this show is all about. My name is Aage, and I'm the host today. And we're coming to you from 44 different platforms. And one of the platforms is the Conscious Awakening Network. And you got to go visit those guys over there because they got close to 50 different shows over there that talk about all the stuff that we're not supposed to know about. It's a good place. I've spent some extensive time over there and I always enjoy myself doing it. Now, also, I want to tell you how to get in touch with me and also Nori, my co-host on Broadcast Team Alpha. Go to broadcastteamalpha.com and send us an email. Actually, there's a place there you can just type in your request and send it to me. I'll get the email and I'll send you whatever information that you would like to have. And also, the if you're watching us on YouTube, that's the place to be because that's the only place where we can monitor the chat room. You can ask questions and we can participate in the show, so to speak, off to the side in the chat room. And another thing I want to tell you is that Nori and I, about a little over 3 years ago, we created a spiritual think tank. And we do incredible things over there. It seems like we're creating out of seemingly nothing sometimes. We found the spiritual language, which is not one of words, it is a different language. And we request things from the universal mind. It's placed into the quantum field, it's sitting there, and quantum mechanics is backing me up on this. It's called the theory of inflation. And then we bring it back from there and we bring it in to the physical existence with us so we can enjoy. We have done incredible there's healings, creating rain to put out forest fires in a matter of about an hour and a half from almost clear skies. So yeah, there's goofy stuff happening there. If you want to come and check it out, send us an email to themastermindconnection@gmail.com. Themastermindconnection@gmail.com. And if you like what you hear today, please subscribe. That'll help us a lot. And also, the super chat is open. So if you want to support us that way, we would love it. That's just like having Christmas every time. So anyway, I want to say a few things about our guest. And his name is Matthew. Oh gosh, Mournian. Am I close on that?
You
Yep.
got it exactly. Yeah.
Okay, good deal. He's a former, and I will emphasize former addiction dependency counselor. But he graduated from that into being teaching psychic abilities, and that is what we're going to talk about. And also energy and body work. He does that, and he teaches people to develop new abilities and work through challenges of the mind that science really don't have a way to deal with. So this is going to be interesting, folks. If you want to hone up on your psychic abilities and understand why things happen, this is the place to be. So don't go anywhere. In the old day, we used to say, don't turn the dial. Don't have dials anymore, but don't go anywhere. We'll be right here. So welcome to the show, Matthew.
Hey, thank you. Thank you for having me. Okay. I sort of wish we still had a dial, honestly. I remember those times, but yeah, it is certainly an honor to be here. So yeah, thanks.
Yeah, yeah. Now you've done a lot with these kinds of abilities and teaching it to other people. But I want to know a little more about you, and so do the viewers. What brought you onto this path, totally out of the box, and brought you away from the regular day-to-day work in the system? Was there an incident? Was it something you learned? What happened to make the break for you?
Oh man, yeah, thank you. This is a well-told story at this point, and it is literal reality of my world. But I was subject to a very, we could say, partially traumatic, partially explosive, we could say an opening of the energy body, specifically the crown chakra. In summer of 2015, I was working in that specific old job that you mentioned there. We were getting veterans into housing at some kind of outdoor fair, and I ended up receiving energy work from a group of older women who just set up a tent there, and they were just kind of, doing their thing on people. And this woman just, she asked if I wanted some energy healing or something like that. I didn't even know what it was. I was just walking around and I wanted to sit in the shade and have a glass, a little cup of water. And I was like, sure, you can do that if I could sit right over there. And she came over and put her hands on my head for a moment of silence. And after that, a whole bunch of things started changing in my world. And but yeah, that was the sparking moment in which everything sort of opened for me. And so I could go on a
Yeah,
lot farther, but yeah, that was how it started.
yeah, and you have learned how to do the same thing, I suppose. So now you help other people with it, huh?
Well, actually, oddly enough, after that moment, it unleashed a series of events in my life that took me about 2 years to recover from. And when I say recover, I mean it was so shocking for me that it was a period where I would actually drift out of my body accidentally if I walked too close to certain people, if I was near a person that had too strong of emotions, or if there was some sort of chaotic energy going on. It was like I would get stuck in it. I would get stuck in people's thought forms. I would get stuck in their memories, which sounds maddening and insane, and it was. And so I had to kind of like piece everything back together little by little within that. And within that journey, I actually went back to the group of people who were doing, this process out there. And I joined their group for over a year. And that was actually the first technique I had ever learned in the world of energy work at all, was how to open the crown chakra, which coincidentally was a thing that had happened to me. So yes, now we do work with the crown constantly,
Mhm.
among many, many other places. But yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and these chakras, they have each one of them have a different purpose, I suppose. The crown chakra connects you to the universe more or less, but the heart chakra, if the heart chakra is closed, you probably could be perceived as more like a heartless person.
Very, very, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
very,
And
very much so.
that's something that people should read about this, and they should contact you and talk about this because when you start opening up the chakras, when I say opening up, what I actually mean is spinning them, probably. And when that happens, life changes because now the energy can flow that otherwise will be trapped. Like the throat chakra, if that is totally clogged, stopped, you have problem communicating.
Oh yeah.
So, folks, get with him on this one because this is important and it's a lot more important than what people think. Now, I mentioned that we're going to talk about psychic abilities because that is a subject very close to my heart. And on broadcastteamalpha.com we have a course on it, but that's a little out there. And in 1997, me and a master psychic, we had a radio show out of Sanford, Florida, where we were giving psychic readings on the radio. And we're going to hear from the expert here. he teaches this also. So what do you contribute mostly to people's developing of the psychic abilities that we all have? We just haven't practiced or even know that we have it.
Well, that's a smart question. First off, I will say it's awesome that you were doing this back in 1997. I recall 1997. That was a great that was a crazy year for me. I was knee deep in a literal entity attachment, scenario that spread through years of my early adulthood. And
Mhm.
part of the reason why I'm literally here now is because I got through all that. But to go back to the question of how or what do we contribute within the realm of intuitive development, I would say first off, it is, and this might be the weird question, but I would say coming to a stage of helping people give themselves permission and full authorization to begin to experience energy or life
Yeah,
or information in a new way. Because I think, first off, one of the things that we come to understand when we start doing this work is that we've been conditioned from day one as human beings to place our consciousness and our understanding and even our power outside of this human body. And so, one of the things that really I think had to occur for me when I started doing this work on a professional level was coming to an understanding that I did know, and there was a way that I could receive information, and the emotions and the images and the thought forms and the things that I was receiving from people, while I didn't necessarily interpret them correctly, they all had meaning. And there was this vast kind of storehouse of knowledge that would come through. And I think for me, I had to meet a person very, very early on at the very start of my journey who was a professional who had been doing this work for decades. And she took one look at me and was like, "You're a psychic. You are." And it was like something about that in that moment. It put a key in and turned the door. And it was like, oh, that's why this is like that and that's like this. And we feel, it was so, for me, the first stage was giving ourselves authorization to perceive differently. From there on, and this is where we go into the work that we do nowadays on a daily basis, is I think really understanding each person from a unique individualist perspective and understanding that based upon the myriad of experiences that we've had in this life, there's already going to be a predetermined set of abilities. Some are going to be very easy for us to activate, some are going to be hidden, some are going to be automatic. And I think one of the places in which I've excelled, I think one of the reasons why I've had success in doing this work is because I do, and it's always hard for me to say this, but I've had to come to ownership of it over the years. I do have a very unique ability to interface or perceive the internal energy of another person. And so oftentimes what I do is, we will be talking within a session and I can feel your throat, I can feel solar plexus, I can feel thymic chakra. And ultimately, the activity that we partake in that causes the opening of abilities, and this is me cutting through tons and tons of other info, is dilation of energy centers. Dilation of energy centers, which strangely enough, a lot of people talk about aligning the chakras or spinning the chakras, which are very, very rightful things. What we've discovered is that just in the act of dilating the chakra system, it will begin to take a little bit of a different formation than it has. And it's a little bit different for each of us. But upon dilation is when things start to take a natural form. And that's when energy rises a little bit differently for people. And it'll naturally arc into places where you have an ability, but at the same time, and hopefully I'm not going on too much with this, I'll pause in a second. Yet at the same time, it will also, as the energy rises, arc over into areas within the body where there's great blockages or issues or manifestations. And so it's a game of both understanding the blockages that we come in with and understanding the natural flow of where a person's energy's going. And anyway, I'm probably over answering, so I'll pause there. But
yeah, but
that's
that's
what we do.
good though. That gives us a fairly
Yeah.
decent understanding how it happened for you.
Yeah.
And I know there is some practice involved, and I think that also goes back. But you are probably a meditator also.
Hmm.
Yeah, and I think I've been saying this over and over again, and when I was done saying that, then I did it over again. And that is higher consciousness usually come through meditation.
Yep.
And I would highly recommend start doing it. Find,
Absolutely.
uh, talk to Matthew about this. And I tell you, there is abilities you have no idea about that comes to you. And when you start meditating, cleaning out the chakras, spin them right. If you have a chakra that's supposed to spin to the right and it's stopped or spin to the left, that can really mess you up.
Oh, it
So,
certainly can.
yeah, and we don't realize this because this is something that we're not supposed to know about.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Big Brother don't want us to know because then we take a little bit of his power away, and God knows we can't have that.
Yeah. I
Uh,
agree.
uh,
That is really kind of the key though for anyone who sees this in the future that's wondering like what is the mechanic or one of the main mechanics behind the process of opening intuitive ability. It's going to be through harmonization, realignment, dilation of the invisible structures within the energy body. And also, I mean, there's a bunch of other things, but detoxification, deprogramming. I could go on that one, but for most of us, I would say that's where kind of like the seeding points for a lot of like the lifestyle changes or the timeline shifts or just the notable kind of even we could even say karmic events will even be interwoven within the chakras, which is a weird thing when you really start diving in there. And I think you can probably agree on this and kind of viewing it in your own way,
mhm.
is that there's such a crazy myriad of experiences and data within the chakra system, which
Yeah.
is crazy because then you could look alongside it. And maybe this is me going way too far once again, but if you look alongside it and look at what one of the other primary systems of energy within the body, which to me, I'll say this over and over again, to me is like the real gold mine. If you want to create immediate change within a person in terms of, we could say, consciousness, balance in the body, emotional well being, the meridian body, the meridians. When you begin working with those, it's like you will notice that they interweave within the chakras in these really interesting places. And anyway, not to go on and on because that's a whole other can of worms, but oh my Lord, there's so much that we are, able to do within those areas. And so, yeah.
Yeah, and let me ask you this then. From someone like Joe Blow and Harry Hohammer coming right off the street, they tell you, I want to become a psychic. What is the first thing you would tell them?
Okay. I would say first off, the very fact that you have a desire is your guides, your higher self, and your spirit telling you that the process has already begun. Secondly, if you and I or any other person whose life path is within that realm are speaking, that means that you have already made the choice, more than likely, to enter into the timeline in which that's a literal reality for you. So, having said that, I would say the first thing that we do, and this is where we come to kind of a system that, it's not mine, but it's the things that I have done that I have partaken in for the past 8 years. I call them the four gateways of intuitive activation. It's not that they're only limited to four because it encompasses many things, but the first thing I think people need to do is really detox the body physically. When I started, I would say the second real, like, fully formed extraterrestrial out of body experience that I had was with a giant praying mantis being. And when I actually got to speak with it and I could understand the energy coming from it, which is nearly impossible for anyone that's had those experiences, the only thing I could perceive from him was he was saying, purify your body. And I was like, okay. I was just, in tears, like, but I didn't understand it. I was like, okay, yeah. And so what I understood a year later was like, oh, he meant detox everything, purify the
Yeah.
container. Because a lot of people come into intuitive development and they'll not understand how come they can't perceive things or feel things or understand them from a comparative perspective in the ways that other do or professionals do. And I think one of the big blockages is that we have been living a lifestyle for most of us walking around on earth, filling our body with, seed oils and chemical compounds and all kinds of things that are just creating a lot of density. So number one, we do detox and deprogramming, which is goes along side by side with it. And that is where we unlearn what we have learned. Like we were saying when we started, we've been taught from the day we were born to pull our power and our awareness outside of the body. Just like even in traditional religions, we're taught that we must go to the priest or the pastor or the whoever to be the middleman between, us and God or spirit as we, understand it. In the first gateway of intuitive development, you become that for yourself. You start to create a new relationship with those things and deprogram yourself. And so I
Yeah.
could say a lot more about it. That's number one. Number two is divination. For those that want to begin to understand what I call the voice of spirit, for those that want to develop a language with which to speak to your guides or the higher self in a way that you can visually look at and perceive that's outside of just thoughts. Because in the beginning, it's hard, right? You're like, well, what's my thought and what's theirs? Like, how do I know what's me and what's someone else? Divination is useful because it gives you an example and a system to work with. That's why I do tarot. We teach tarot as well. But it doesn't have to be that. It can be any form of divination. So that's the second gateway. And I think that's kind of a defining factor for a lot of people right now within what we would call the spiritual community, if you want to call it star seeds or disclosure community, is that there's really not a lot of emphasis upon developing strong systems of discernment that are built through divination because it's still seen as a little bit of a woo-woo thing. But so anyway, divination is gateway number two. I'll make the second two quick and then I'll pause. The third one is energy anatomy, which we talked about, working with the chakras and whatnot, learning those. And then fourth, most important, energy body cultivation, which you and I also spoke about in terms of, I think before we got started, speaking about the oxygenation, the
Yeah.
breathing, Qigong. And so anyway, that's the super short version. I'll
W-
pause there.
Where would meditation fall into that sequence?
Oh, honestly, that is within everything. And it's funny that you had mentioned that because this is a thing that I've been talking about in the training groups that we do. And I think that is probably above all the number one most important factor that I think people need to look at. And people that know me know I'll always say this is the most important thing, and tomorrow I'll have a different most important thing. But I know that for me, that was the defining factor. That and qigong actually learning to sit in silence, in pure silence, and allow the voice of spirit to present itself to you within that silent moment, I think is a thing that also within the spiritual community that we are all a part of, there's very little value added to it. You know what I mean? Very little value added to remaining in silence, or if you want to call it prayer, and allowing, if you want to call it God or spirit to speak with you. I know for
Yeah.
me, that was a thing that was just burned into me very, very early on. And it's actually a practice that we do in our group, or it's and this is not even a long time, but we do 30 minutes of silence. I would like to do an hour or more,
Hmm.
but not everybody will stay there for that long. But 30
Yeah.
minutes is really digestible for most, normal people, so to speak. So, but yeah, that's yeah,
Yeah.
indispensable.
I think too that the psychic abilities can come to you in strange ways. Now, if somebody say, I want to become a psychic, yeah, there is a process to develop that involve meditation and what you talked about, and also intention, communication with the unified field, and because everything is connected through
Yeah,
this, Star Trek would call it subspace. There is a lattice with energy fields that is connecting and touching each other. So, but then again, there are other people too that become very psychic. Look at Edgar Casey.
hmm
He had, I guess I could call it a dream, but he had an experience with an angelic being that the angelic being asked him, what do you want to do? And he said, I want to heal. And the gift of healing was given to him. The gift of healing involved psychic abilities to know what is going on in the other person's body and even seeing inside of the body. Then, not long ago, I talked to a guy that became extremely psychic by being hit by lightning right in
Wow.
the head.
Okay.
Now, I
Wow.
would highly recommend for people don't go out and get hit by lightning
Yeah.
because that'll probably kill you. He was lucky; it
Yeah.
wasn't that strong of a lightning, but it changed the structure somehow in the brain where it woke up a part of the brain that was the gate into that lattice or that connection of everything.
Yeah. That makes a
And
lot of sense.
this is, but I tell you, folks, it may not take all that much practice to start seeing the results. Uh, Nori Love and I, we do this ever so often. I have no idea how many times I reach for the phone and I'm calling her and I look at and the phone ring. It's her. And she says the same thing. Oh,
Hmm.
I was going to call you. That is a form of connection. Of course, we've talked so much, it's understandable, but it comes to you.
Yeah.
Same thing with married couple that spent years together. They start tuning to each other. So you know when the other one is sad when they don't tell you, or they're angry when they don't tell you. You know it, so you're a little more careful. You start feeling each other that way, as
Yeah.
well as you can know. I was on, oh, this probably several years ago now, I was on the phone with a psychic, and this is a funny story. I just got to tell you. And he was but he was kind of rough in the way that he said
Yeah.
things. And I
Hmm.
said, sir, if you are that good, that he told me some stories. If you're that good, what number am I thinking of? And he said 13. And I'll be dipped in chocolate. I thought of 13.
Yeah.
These things happen when you practice, when you know it can happen and claim it. And
Yeah.
talk to Matthew about this one.
It's absolutely true. Yeah. I'm definitely with you.
Yeah. And, we also hear that the brain, not the mind, but the brain is a transceiver. It's a transmitter and a receiver of frequencies. And we talked about this before we started recording, and that is that I have found that there is something magic about the number 7.4. And I, I can kind of get the brainwave pattern to slow down to that number, 7.4
Mm.
cycles per second. And but there are also monks in Tibet that say we can raise our brainwave frequency to 100 and even more. Uh, Greg Braden talked about that
Mhm.
when he visited there. He said that they can raise it to about 100, and then the psychic abilities becomes extremely strong, just as well as they do down below. And I don't understand the difference between that. But what do you feel that brain actually can do as a transmitter and maybe someone else to receive? Is it more than just frequency, do you think? Or is it just maybe other things too that maybe is feeling that is added to the frequency? Or
That's a
I
good
don't know.
question.
I'm
I
just
think,
talking.
right, right. First off, I agree with nearly everything that you've said. When we talk about, I guess, frequency, and maybe we had commented on this a little bit earlier. I guess it's always been a little odd for me because I don't perceive things we could say numerically or within, that sort of range, but more so, like you're saying through feeling. And yet at the same time, I absolutely agree. There to me, There was a very distinct turning point that occurred in my life in 2010 when I started working with this self-hypnosis program called the Silva method, which I don't know how I found it. I just bumped into it online. I was like, what's this? I feel like I should do it. And one of the big focuses of it, that was the first one I used, was going into theta or, deep theta and just doing this weird theta meditation. I don't know why at that stage of my life, I just kept doing it and doing it and doing it. And there was these weird exercises and I would download these things and they were like, manifest your parking space, manifest this. And I would just try them secretly, not telling anyone. And it worked and it was shocking. And, I got focused on things later, but it showed me at a very, very early stage that there was a distinct thing that occurred with the silencing or the altering of the vibratory, some sort of cyclical process within the brain. And so later on, when I started doing this work years later, I started to identify within people that were having a hard time with those things, certain areas in which there would be something like a blockage or like a almost like circuits. And I could feel that there was energy on the right side or the left side that wasn't really going the right way. Or I know that learning anatomy gave me a visual representation of what I was feeling. But I think
Mhm.
what it taught to me was that number one, yes, frequency, and Tesla said it as well. Frequency, vibration. I think there was something else, but there was definitely this frequency thing happening, and there was these places within people's bodies where
Yeah.
it was kind of getting caught up. And what I also noticed was that there was well, I think multiple other systems, but another one I think had to do with something similar, what we would call a mycelium network that fungi and mushrooms use to connect their consciousness. And so there was the frequency aspect, there was the mycelium network, if you want to call it, aspect of it that seemed to be more rooted in the underside of the human energy field. And so for me, I think not only is the brain both the transmitter of those things, it's the receiver of those things, but we're also working with the harmonization of the cellular structure of the body. And maybe we always have, and maybe that's just, a thing that we're coming into more focus on now. But I think that is one of the big things right now that is cutting people off from their abilities is that, once again, we're very removed from the physical body. And so I don't know if I'm like not even answering your question and twisting off into
Yeah.
another direction, but I just one other thing on that. One of the places I've noticed where people tend to get very blocked up at the beginning has to do with the cranial nerves, especially when we talk about the brain as the transmitter or receiver. I think the cranial nerves right now for a lot of us have a vast storehouse of ability and knowledge. And I would even say, yet I do not understand it fully, each one of the cranial nerves has a unique ability and stage of consciousness that goes along with it. And I would say the one that most of us are wrestling with most of the time is the vagus nerve. But anyway, I think I've over answered that.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
that's good though, because our thoughts control pretty much the body. I think it was Greg Braden again that said on one of his shows that the reason we get sick is because we think ourselves sick. And
Mhm.
over 90%, I think, of the time we get sick is because of we accept it. We think ourselves sick. And
Yeah.
that is why that Joe Dispenza broke his back. I mean, it was just crushed. There was pieces of the spine that was just dislodged. He he was a chiropractor. He understood the spine. So he started visualizing for hours a day a healthy, put together spine with a spinal cord perfectly healthy inside. It was a matter of a fairly short time. It had assembled itself and he was up walking around. And in a matter of, I think it was a month or two, three, he was back to work.
Yeah.
So we can think ourselves well. In fact, we can heal things. That is totally impossible according to doctors.
I definitely agree.
So every cell in our body is listening 24 hours a day.
Oh yeah. That's
In
been a
fact,
thing I've really had to like come to terms with over the
Yeah,
past few years when you say that, because, and I know this is such an old kind of saying, but it's like, especially when you have a lot of like negative energy or thought forms or like negative emotions, it's like that was a big lesson for me of the
yeah,
past year was like, how come things aren't manifesting or moving in the way? And it's like, well, you're holding on to a lot of old negative emotional energy. And anyway, yeah, I feel
yeah.
you.
And it can be innocent. We can sometime, well, okay, this is me. There are times when I say something stupid, like when I say something stupid, then realize what I just said, and oh yeah, I'm an idiot. Okay, the subconscious mind hears that and it accepts it. Every cell in your body hears that and
Yeah.
accepts it. So with playing on words, it'll look at what you just said. An idiot. Okay, I'll work with that. I'll make you stupid.
Yep.
It may not happen right away, but if you keep saying it a lot,
Over
things start
time.
degrading the quality of your thinking and your brain and your mind. And Nori catches me at that ever so often, and she says, "What do you say that for?" You
Hmm.
know, so we got to really watch ourselves,
Oh yeah.
and it's hard to do,
Yeah. We're speaking
especially
reality every day.
yeah, and when something s- stupid happens. Let's say you drop your spoon on the floor during breakfast, and what do you say? Yeah, it pops out sometimes. And those words aren't any good, but it pops out
Right.
anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the subconscious say, "Oh, okay, I'll work with that." No, the brain is an enormous, is probably the most complicated instrument in our existence, in
Yeah.
this universe.
I
Wow.
agree.
Yeah. Now you do qigong. Talk about that a little bit
Yeah.
because I know enough about it. I haven't practiced, but I know enough about
Oh,
it to
really?
do.
Oh man. Okay. Yeah, definitely. So in the realm of Qigong, and there will be a few people that will hear this who will cringe because they'll be like, here he goes. He's going to say the thing that he always says. But I pray to God that if there's one thing that people hear from me and take from this talk here today, it would be that you would begin a practice of Qigong in your life because it was the one thing that I think it was the number one first turning point for me as a person who had been, I guess if you want to say victimized, no, that's not the right word, beset, we'll use that by negative energies, astral parasites, trauma, thought forms, all kinds of negative energies. I think I came into this world with a contract that said, we're going to give you a huge amount of it early on. And if you can get through it all, you'll go to this stage. And with the very first time in my life when I felt that I had control or a shield or a layer of energy against negativity was when I started doing Qigong in
Oh,
2015. That was the first time in my life. And it wasn't because I wanted to get healthy. It wasn't for any other reason other than because a person that I knew that had helped me was like, dude, if you start doing this, you'll stop feeling that way. And I was like, what? Really? And he was like, yeah. And I was like, so you're telling me if I stand in my room and start doing these stretches and start doing this, that all that will stop. And here we are. Literally 8 years later, and I'm like, actually, that's literally what worked. And so I don't use any specific school of Qigong. I don't really follow any particular method. I kind of put together a number of kind of movements and things that I think for me have been the most optimal practice. Although there's some things that I've changed and kind of brought in, but the reason why this is important, before I ramble on too long about it, is this is what we call the fourth gateway of true intuitive activation. Once we've identified that, yes, I have an ability and yes, I'm working towards strengthening that, or, maybe you've, experienced it a few times and you're wondering how do I keep it going? Because right now we're living in a time, I think you can agree, where there's a bunch of people coming into the scene or the community. And, this is a joke that I say, but I'm also serious. But I know you've seen this. people will, do ayahuasca on Friday and by Monday they're like a shaman, you know what I mean? And you're like, and now I have a website and a YouTube channel, and you're like, oh, oh Lord, and there's 10,000 people following them. And one of the things that we see is that while there are states of activation that take place, the defining factor for who can maintain it and who can hold it comes from cultivation of the energy body. And I would say cultivation of the energy body above all else, even if one was to neglect the emotional body, because we know there are many emotionally vacant, soulless, negative beings walking around with tremendous amounts of power. So healing and holiness are not
Yeah,
necessarily the prerequisite, but the prerequisite is cultivation of vital life force energy in the body. And so that's what Qigong gives you.
yeah,
And so this is a thing that I tell everyone. And honestly, you don't need to go to a Qigong master or take a class, although that will definitely help. But you
yeah.
can go on YouTube and just enter a easy, beginner qigong, look for somebody you like and start mimicking them. And it's really, you find a path that works and keep doing it, and you will treat it just like we do when we get up every morning, brush your teeth,
Yeah.
brush your hair, get dressed. It becomes this part of you. And I know that for me, that is the one practice that has persisted above all else almost every single day since I started this
Mm,
journey. And so I think for me, it has been, the key to, I think, anti-aging. It has been the key toward creating resiliency of the energy body. It has been the key towards stopping autoimmune symptoms. It has been the key toward balancing grave emotional and mental, disturbances within the body. And I can tell you specifically why is because there is a process that takes place when we start doing qigong where we begin to lengthen and open up the central channels in the body, the governing vessel and the conception vessel, which is this loop of energy that we have constantly flowing through us. When we start doing qigong, the river gets stronger and wider and moves with much more force. And so anyway,
mm.
I'm not trying to make this an infomercial. So
Yeah, but that's good. That's good. Sometimes we need that.
yeah.
That's deep into the understanding of it. And I was also going to say that for those of you that joined us late here, we're talking to Matthew Mournian, and we've been talking about psychic abilities, the energy body, and how to develop your mind and your brain and your body to levels that you probably didn't even know you could, because there's so much more to us than what the government and religion tell us. I think we got to at least get a couple of toes out of the box and things start opening up for you.
Yeah.
Now, the Qigong, I know there's some phenomenal things health wise in that. And if you go to YouTube and find one, like you said, that you can relate to, resonate with, start doing what they do. Guess what? It's free.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
That's the
so
best part.
yeah, that's the best part. And you can start getting the health benefits. In fact, 5, 6, 7 years ago, I had another podcast with a lady from Germany, Diana. She had she was a mess health wise, and she started doing qigong, and in less than 6 months she was perfectly healthy. There were nothing wrong with it. She has oh God, I couldn't even say some of the stuff that overweight and all kinds of things. So it brought her back to a good, healthy condition.
Yeah. It
And
will definitely do that.
yeah, personally, I do the Tibetan rites, which is okay to. Well, I don't know. It's been doing okay for me, so I'm
Yeah,
gonna
yeah.
keep. I'm gonna keep doing it.
Something you've been doing seems to be serving you well. I'll say a really crazy thing to you. Get ready. Here we go. One of the things that we can do, one of the things that I do in the sessions that I do with people is you can actually view or perceive what I would call the vibratory quality of a person's DNA or the essence within them. You have a very, very strong vibratory essence. I would even go so far as to say there's a stage, I would say, within the last 10 years or so where you went through a major change and you started to actively lengthen something along the, I would call like the telomere strand, where it's almost like there was a stage where there was a gap and then something got stronger and started to kind of pull and sort of extend itself in a certain way. And that might not make any sense in the energy of the moment, but they're one of the things that I will see in people who have made a choice to remain on the earth plane for a time, meaning that their body's going to need to hold more life essence. So it's almost like grounding us here. And some people don't like to hear that because a lot of people are like, I'm trying to leave the planet, not remain on it. But I think for like a lot of us, it's a sign that you're where you're supposed to be right now. And one of the places you can look for the quality of that energy, get ready. This is such a weird thing. One of the places in which one might begin to perceive the quality of that energy would be at the crown and also the bottoms of your feet, the Earth Star chakra, which is like a plug-in point. And so, anyway, hopefully that
Mhm.
makes a little bit of sense to you.
Yeah, you said there was a change for me about 10 years ago.
Yeah, yeah.
Why did you pick 10 years?
That's a very good question. I would say like maybe I can give you more information. Just based upon what I would call the segmented quality of the way I perceive people's DNA, I don't know that it's within what we would call like a 10-year period or a time cycle. It's just things that I've learned to kind of feel into and judge. And one of the ways that I would judge that is based upon kind of like, sometimes how you'll see how people will have a scar and it'll form and a little part of it will have like a little bump where new growth occurred. You'll notice that within the fabric of people's energy body. And sometimes you'll even see it in sort of organs. It's not a sign of blockage. It's almost like something had to kind of go stronger and then create new growth out of it. Kind of the way you've seen reptiles that will get a tail cut
Yeah.
off and it grows a nub and then eventually it grows into a whole other tail. So I don't know
Yeah.
if that explains anything, but
Well,
yeah.
this is why, folks, that we are having this show because he's a psychic. 10 years ago, there was a big change. That's when I had a universal download. I was sitting in meditation and everything turned white around me, and I could see it was an explanation of the universe. The whole universe was explaining concept in detail all around me. And it was very fast, went by concept, ideas, inventions, people, and all that was in there. And then it stopped. But it is embedded, recorded
Oh,
in the brain, so I have it. And there's going to be another book coming out where I talk about some of those inventions and these things, much beyond the one that I already have. Now,
whoa.
that was 10 years ago, and that made
Nice.
a change for me
Nice.
because
Thank you for the
uh,
confirmation.
yeah, after that, things changed big time.
Huh. Interesting. You definitely did something right there. I would say just the very fact that that's mentioned here today is spirit telling you, and I know you don't need to hear this, but other people will often benefit from hearing, so that was real. Randomly, this random person's
Yeah,
telling me on a show 10 years later that something happened. Because like a lot of us, it's like a human thing. We'll be, the human mind will go like, what if I? Because I've
yeah,
often asked that about myself, given all the weird things that happened to me at the beginning. And I think I said this recently on some other thing, and I was like, even if it was a hallucination that Matthew went through that made him think that all these things were happening, somehow the energy seems to be right. And we come into moments like this, and it's like, huh, it turns out you did have an event 10 years ago, so it's like something still works, within it. And anyway,
yeah, yeah,
it's a cool thing.
yeah. And are there any examples of people that have come to you as a total mess and in After a bit, they turn into wonderful human beings with great abilities.
Oh, I think there have been a number of situations in the very beginning, and still most often, I would say transformational stuff occurs within people that show up seeking help with releasing trauma and uncovering just blockages and just deep childhood wounds within their life, whether that be for the goal of becoming more intuitive or just because they've somehow been led to me and they're like, and this is a thing I get a lot of times, like, I don't know why I'm here, but I feel that there's something that you're going to help me with. I don't know why. It's not always about becoming more psychic. Sometimes it's about, I just need, a reading or this or that. It can be a number of things, but
Mhm.
anyway, I would say that's kind of usually where it starts, but for some reason I blanked out on your question. Can you can you
Yeah,
ask me
but
that again?
I see too that we are doing a lot of the same things.
Yeah.
So yeah, so we got now. You said before we started recording, when we had a half-hour talk before, that was
I
really
guess we did,
interesting.
huh? Sorry.
And
Yeah.
you said something that I had a strong aura.
Oh
The
yeah.
aura is the bioelectromagnetic field around the body,
Yeah.
and it is very often misconstrued as being the bright white universal life force around you. The bioelectromagnetic field is it's electric. It can be
Yeah.
measured, but the white light around you that is the universal life force, non-physical and really can't be measured. Now there is some equipment that measures orgone energy that can also
Yeah.
measure the white light. But the what can you say about aura for people? Because a lot of people don't understand. They know we have one, or they highly suspect we have one,
Yeah.
but they don't think about it much.
That's a smart one. How would yeah, what can we say upon the aura? I would say it's a very, very commonly used kind of term that's getting thrown around right now, whether it be from, like the newer, generations or, the older generations. And maybe I'm incorrect in saying this, but through my understanding, for most people, the easiest way you can understand the person's aura, let's just say and I say this with love and respect for normal, regular, muggles, so to speak. How would you understand a person's aura? It's the vibe that you perceive when they walk in the room, maybe not the look, the sound of it, but it is also that it's the sort of wave of energy that one brings in, the sort of like you said, bioelectric container, which I agree can be measured, has been measured scientifically. And then, like you said, there's another form of energy, and I fully agree with that. I think that it goes beyond anything technological, where I
Yeah.
have identified for a lot of people, and maybe this is just a needless thing to say, maybe me throwing it in there, but I've noticed that that pertains a lot more to the positioning of what we call the assemblage point within
Mm.
the auric field, which maybe you've heard of. For most people, it's kind of within the back, in between your shoulder blades, and it's
Um,
one of the primary openings through which what we would call universal energy, or for at least through my understanding, when you talk about that sort of white light, universal, multidimensional source energy, I think for most people, that's one of the primary gateways and through which that enters the auric field, which for those out there that are familiar with the author Carlos Castaneda talks about the assemblage point. And so I think for a lot of us, that's kind of emanations of energy from the assemblage point, which for some people will be absolutely unperceivable. And for
mhm.
some people, it'll be the only thing you can perceive. And I think a lot of that has to do with the positioning of where the assemblage point is on the back, because it's a very movable thing within the energy body. And as it rises, or we could even say moves maybe to the left, we start to kind of vibrate in and out of what we would call like the human range in a little bit of a different way. And I think that's where that sort of vibration of white light, universal energy that you're referring to becomes a little bit more palpable. And so, yeah, there's definitely a difference. But I would say the auric field is probably the thing that we exchange with humans the most. Like
Yeah,
when you're alongside another person and like later on you're thinking about them or feeling their vibe, or sometimes you go to a person's house and you kind of smell them on you, that type of thing. It's reminiscent of how our auric fields mix. And anyway, I'm just kind of going on and on about it, but I certainly agree with your stance. So
yeah.
if that
And
makes sense.
yeah, we connect with people often like that. In fact, we can connect with departed ones too.
Hmm. Oh yeah.
My mom died in 1997, but there are times when I smell her perfume
Yeah.
here in the house. And don't ask me how that happens. That's above my pay grade, but it does happen.
Oh, it does.
And
Yeah.
that's, I've had visits with her over the years where I actually can communicate with her, but there are times when she probably just pops in and say, "Wonder how you're doing,"
Oh
and
yeah.
then leaves again and leave the scent of her perfume behind. It
Uh,
happens.
have you experienced that like recently?
Yeah. Well, recent few months now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes sense. Yeah. You might experience something like that again soon. I think that there's somewhat of an opening or we could even, like, if you want to use this term, a lessening or a removal on a much greater level of the so-called veil that's occurring right now in January specifically. I think it kind of started around like the end of December, and I'm not
Yeah.
saying this from an astrological perspective because I'm the least astrological professional psychic in the world. I'm like all body systems and like empathic energy. People
Yeah.
tell me their birth dates, and I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
you know. But yeah, there's a gap in between what I would call timelines that are ending and timelines that are beginning right now, and you're gonna notice this happens at times when a bunch of people, and I say this respectfully, a bunch of people will pass on in
Mm.
the next month. There will be a number of notable people, maybe not, maybe people in your family, maybe others that we know, whoever, people are going to check out, and there's going to be a resurgence of energy. Check this out. This might be important for you. There will be a resurgence and energy of a resurgence of energies and themes from, get ready, the end of 2022.
Oh.
Think of what were you doing a couple years ago in 2022, because that energy is going to return to you over the coming months, as is something that I think occurred for a lot of us a decade or more ago. And so for you, it could be a very different thing. For me, it'll be a different thing, but there will be a cyclical return of opportunistic energy and an opportunity to recreate something that might have been a missed opportunity from the past. And so anyway,
Okay.
be on a lookout for it, and
Yeah, all right.
I'll
Hey,
pause
we're
there.
getting down towards the end here. Let people know where they can connect with you. And if you have any publications that you want to
Totally.
promote, just floor is yours.
Totally. First of all, thank you for having me here. I really, really appreciate you. Everyone can find me at rememberyourmission.com. This is the only work that I do, whether it be readings, energy clearing, whether it be, I know the dreaded word right now. I prayed that I would never say this word, but it's a reality. Also, coaching and intuitive development. It's literally all we've been doing for the past few years. And so you can find me at rememberyourmission.com. But also, you can go to Amazon and you can get my book called Remember Your Mission. What if you're not crazy? What if you're psychic? It came out in June. And it can take people through the four gateways of intuitive activation. It's me kind of talking about my journey. How did this start for me? Which I've come to learn has been very different for a lot of people within our soul group. And so you can find me there. You can find me on Amazon, also on YouTube at Remember Your Mission as well, where we have kind of a semi-regular live show that we do We'll probably do another one in the next few days, but we're on YouTube over there. And then lastly, I know this is a lot. Lastly, we are on Patreon where I do a monthly reading group and an energy clearing group with my wife and Nora. We're in our fifth year. We've been doing this 5 years now, every single month. And we are on Patreon at the Blue Flame Collective. And so you guys can join us at any one of those places. And honestly, thank you for having me here. I have
Yeah,
definitely enjoyed talking with you.
yeah. Say that name on Patreon again.
Yes, it's patreon.com/blue flame collective.
Okay.
Or you can also just go to Remember Your Mission on Patreon as well. If you type that in, it goes to the same.
Okay. All right. Good.
Yeah.
That's good. Now, what if people want a personal consultation with you? How do they
Oh,
connect?
they can just reach me through my website,
Okay.
rememberyourmission.com. And there's a contact form down on the bottom. That's the number one way to get a hold of me. I'm really bad at Facebook Messenger. So if you write to me on there, there's no guarantee. But most people that email me, I always see emails. So that's the best way to find me through the website.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. Oh boy, this was interesting. So thank you very much for being
Thank
with
you.
us. I really enjoyed this. There is so much more to talk about. Can I have you come back sometime?
Absolutely. Anytime. Seriously. I appreciate you.
Yeah, yeah, that would be good. All right. Well, then, thank you very much for being here. And for the listeners out there, if you like what you heard, please subscribe. And also, until next time, be good to each other.